Okay, welcome everybody to the Revenue Accounting and Reporting User Group meeting. Pete, take it away.
Thanks, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, thanks everyone for joining this virtual only user group meeting. We may hopefully in the fall when things open back up and stay open, we also have, Adobe had been hopeful that we'd have a meeting earlier in the year, but we're not able to have that. So we still have that one kind of in our planning horizon, but we thought it was worthwhile getting on the phone now that it's early June and giving an update on RAR. So really today we have the standard agenda, and I just want to make sure about the disclaimer because Volkmar and Gerald will be going through some planned roadmap items that could change, so please keep that in mind. Again, for folks that may be new to the meeting, this is really the user group meeting, global user group meeting for SAP Revenue Accounting and Reporting. We like to call it RAR for short. Where really our brand promise is to automate and simplify revenue accounting, and the idea of the RAR system is simply put the documents into the system represented by the funnel, add some rules, and out come the journal entries. Now we know it's a lot more complicated than that, but we always are trying to simplify it. And we are fortunate to also have SAP IT today. We are using RAR, and Serbi's team will give you an overview of what they've just rolled out. And so thanks also to the other users that have joined. We are rebuilding the user group link, so it's under construction, so hopefully we'll be getting that resolved. There's a new kind of user group platform that SAP has introduced, and so we're migrating to that, and it's taking a little bit of time. So don't want to use a lot of time on the introductions, but anyway, so we've used just a couple minutes for intros. Want to thank Bramazol again for hosting. We will first go through the product updates with Volkmar and Gerald. Gerald joins, so Gerald, apologies that I didn't add you to the agenda item. I'll add it for the follow-up that goes out. Then we'll go through RAR at SAP. I think Serbi will have a very interesting presentation for folks. She has been on the RAR journey since day one. She was the first customer. Then we'll have a deep dive topic by our consulting team led by Rashni and Ankus. Then we'll have John, really the Bramazol team, will then give us what we think is an interesting demo to show you not only some of the nice changes in the UI on S4 1909, but also show you in a private cloud, because we have people now just asking about different options about on-premise and in the cloud, and wanted to just show you what's possible with RAR in the cloud. And then we'll have a few minutes to wrap up if there's any outstanding questions. We'll try to take questions in the chat as we go, but to keep the agenda online, we may have to push some questions to the end. John, did you want to add anything before we start with the product updates from Volkmar and Gerald?
No, Pete, other than to remind everybody we are recording the session. So shortly after this, you'll be able to get a copy of it. I assume Pete will put it in the jam and the user group area, but you'll also be able to get it through our links that we'll provide.
Right. Okay, so I will stop sharing and we'll turn it over to Volkmar and Gerald.
Okay, Volkmar, you should be able to present now.
All right, let's see if that is working out. Can you
yes,
see my screen? Oh, yes. Perfect.
Yep, we can hear. We can see.
But you see basically the. Let me switch that. Is that better?
Now I'm seeing your notes views, but no.
Yeah, okay, actually it should be the other way around. Okay, just sorry. Okay, good. Back.
Yes.
Yeah, hello, and Pete. Thanks for the introductions. So very briefly, my name is Volkmar Zahn. I'm part of the S4HANA product management team. Here together with Gerald Bellenhofer from our product engineering side. And yes, we today would like to share with you some updates from the SAP Revenue Accounting Roadmap, both for available releases, but also providing an outlook for the upcoming S4HANA release 2020. And as a result, as Pete already pointed out, we have to make you aware of the forward-looking statements, and of course there may be changes to some of the outlook items and future items we were going to present. So just to quickly recap, when we talk about revenue recognition at SAP, obviously we have a few options at hand. We specifically on the on-premise side, we talk about SAP Revenue Accounting and Reporting. Revenue Accounting is one of the core solutions we have available, especially around the IFRS 15 requirements. But at the same time, it's also valid to point out that we have a significant cloud offering where revenue recognition has been tied more closely into all the processes, and at some point we may also want to share this here in this user community. Nevertheless, today the main focus should be on RAR, on revenue accounting, and as a result I would like to first of all give you a little update on timelines and support packages. As you know, we started off with revenue accounting as an add-on. The 1.3 release is the core release we have. We added additional feature packs starting in 2018, and then continued with what you see here, support packages. And what we released just this Monday was actually SP12. I'm going to talk about this. You see here that the time frame has been a longer time frame and will be continuing to be a longer time frame to collect the notes. And so basically initially we shipped support packages every 3 months. Now the time schedule is every 6 months, and we will continue with that. So we assume that the next support package then will be around end of Q4. And then, of course, it will continue that way. The add-on had been, as you probably all know, developed in a way that it can be deployed on an ECC release, but also on S4HANA up until 1709. At the same time, we took the decision already with 1809 to move revenue accounting, or the functionality of the add-on revenue accounting, into the S4HANA core. And that happened already starting in 2018 and continued then in the journey. So the first release where we could already see some benefits of the enhanced revenue accounting features was with 1909. We then, with a feature pack, added additional functionalities. I'll come to that later. And what I also would like to share today with you is how the journey continued. So what additional features can you expect in the 2020 release, and what will be made available there. Before we go into this, just very briefly, SP12. So as I said before, SP12 was shipped, released this Monday. There's 127 nodes in it. It's mainly around corrections. However, also you will find some enhancements. Usually the nodes are flagged accordingly. The time frame for this correction phase was, as I mentioned earlier, the 6 months, changing from 3 months as before. If you are interested in additional information, we usually suggest to have a look at the release information node. The number is indicated here. There we usually put updates in what the essential information is if you want to move to an SP12. Also what you should consider in that context. But it also will outline a little bit around additional functionalities here. The main focus was on some enhanced tracking capabilities. So for instance, there's a new report available for displaying and searching for change items. There is additional initial report to explain allocated amounts and how price changes worked. We also did enhancements for the business reconciliation report. That report was initially only available for the sales and distribution component, SD, but we also added that you can reconcile data, for instance, from FICA. And then there's some enhancements around account assignments for bill of material items. So these were the core topics around the add-on. The focus now I wanted to put on the 1909 release, and just a little recap. So if you have been following the earlier user groups, you probably will remember that I already talked about the optimized contract management. So what's the background? When we started with the add-on a number of years ago, the initial focus was to make this available also to ECC customers. And as a result, obviously we could not benefit from all the good things within S4HANA. So with moving revenue accounting into the S4 core, obviously we also looked at what can be optimized, what can be improved, what benefits can we have. And as a result, we started off in looking into the contract management part, where we did some significant changes. We also outlined this here as an optimized contract management version. Of course, understanding that customers that are already live and maybe moving to S4HANA would not necessarily immediately want to change to this optimized version, especially because it also takes some time to get on par with the classic capabilities. Following a little bit the terminology we used also for general ledger. You remember we have had the new GL and the classic GL. We called the existing capabilities contract management classic. So you will find this in the IMG, which is basically the functionality you were used to in the add-on. Why did we do this optimized version? There's a number of reasons for it. Performance optimizations were one significant feedback we had received, especially for customers with huge contracts with many thousands of performance applications. And also, we took this opportunity to add additional features. One common requirement was the capability of a day-based contract modification. Usually, when we did contract changes, we looked at the whole period. But especially in time-based scenarios or rateable scenarios, the idea of taking into account when the change within a month happens was very important. As a result, we took this opportunity to add this functionality. As a result, obviously, that required some changes, and to some extent, they were also quite significant. But what we tried to achieve was to stay stable in terms of the table structure. So you will not find completely new tables. You will still see the contracts, you will see the performance obligations, deferral items, fulfillments, invoices, all of that is still the same way. Of course, adding where we saw the need for improvements. So for instance, to indicate what the revenue catch-up is, we added an additional field in our tables. But in general, you will find that the overall data model is still the same. What does that mean now as a customer if you move from your add-on to the S4HANA track? So first of all, you can continue to run the classic contract management in parallel. That is possible. We, of course, still under 1909 have a number of things we had to work on. I come to that later in 2020. And we said for 1909, it's specifically relevant for customers that have a highly automated revenue recognition process, because the change scenarios we did not yet cover. So where you go into the contract and do changes on the attributes, that is something we have now in the 2020 release. But as a result, obviously the classic contract management still plays quite a significant role in the 1909 S4HANA track. Again, if you're interested in more information, I would like to point you to the release information note outlined here on this slide. And there you can also find more details on what is supported in classic contract management, what is supported in optimized, and take a choice what solution better fits to your requirements. Obviously, if you have additional questions around that, Gerald and myself would be available. also after the call to advise you what we would suggest as the best choice to start with.
Hey, Volkmar, real quick, a couple of people asked about, can you just remind people the difference, and it's ironic it comes right up here, FP. What's the difference between an FP, a feature pack, and an SP?
Okay, that's a very good point. Yes, I'm sorry that I did not outline this more specifically. A feature pack, and maybe I just go back to that slide here. A feature pack is usually a support package, but where SAP has added features, not some minor features, but really something which is significant. You see here, we talk only about support packages, although we already have some additional functionality being provided. But really the main focus of this SP12, for instance, was around corrections. And as a result, we call it the support package. Versus if you look at a feature pack, yes, there's also corrections in it, but also SAP prominently outlines what features have been added. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And that's a good bridge, because what I discussed here was mainly around the initial release of S/4HANA 1909. Obviously, also there was a FPS1, a feature pack 1, which is very common, as you will see this in all the S/4HANA releases. And there, it's a good example. We added actually additional functionality, which is the integration with S/4HANA Service. You may be familiar with the service management functionality, usually very much driven out of the CRM context. There was is also an integration available from CRM into revenue accounting, but here under 1909 feature pack 1 S/4HANA Service was enabled. So basically service management capabilities like service contracts, for instance, which you knew initially more from the CRM context, are now also part of the S/4HANA core. And as a result, we also looked into the integration there. The setup here is that you have usually a service contract. You see a little screenshot on the right-hand side, covering, for instance, the maintenance contract. And then usually tied to the service contract, you have a billing plan, regular periodic billing plan, which then is executed, and the execution is then done through the SD capabilities through sales billing. So usually a so-called billing document request is created, which is then invoiced. And we connected that to revenue accounting in this feature pack 1, which means that the transaction price from the service contract, but also the SSP, the standalone selling price, is determined here in that case through BF Plus, and then can be used to allocate the revenues based on the overall transaction price. So all the functionality you are familiar with anyway from revenue accounting. And revenue accounting then takes care of the revenue adjustments and so on. So this is something we added with feature pack 1, and also what I assume will continue, that we will have a look at what additional features can be provided also after the initial release of a major shipment like the 1909. So that is a little recap, I would say, and also with some additional features that have been provided. I now would like to give you a little outlook, and again, we just had the development close also this week, so it's very fresh. We now go into the testing cycle, and I need to point out here that what I will provide to you is a labs preview. Obviously, there could be changes possible, but still, hopefully, it gives you a little bit the idea of what the teams have been working on. So the first area is around enhancements to the optimized contract management. And the idea was really to enable features you, yes, knew already from the classic contract management, but to enable then these features and also where possible improve them. One major improvement we have seen is around specifically the UI. You may remember that being an add-on, we had to stick to capabilities that were available in the NetWeaver stack. This is mainly WebDynPro, for instance, for the UI, or SAP GUI. And now with moving into S/4HANA, We obviously took the opportunity to also renew all the UIs. So there's a dedicated Fiori app for managing revenue contracts. And here we added now the creation and changing of manual performance obligations, also the changing of attributes. As I said before, under 1909, we purely followed more an automated scenario, which you may find in high volume industries like in telcos. Now, if you go more into the direction of high tech, for instance, obviously there could be potential changes to the POB, which also then need to be reconciled. So there's also an app for what we call here conflicted revenue contracts and the work list behind that. Compounds have been enabled, so where you have to group items from the operational systems together. For instance, software sales and maybe a project or POC type fulfillment. You could group this together in a compound group and then steer revenue recognition based on that group. Cost of fulfillment and acquisition cost was added depending on the sender components that provide the data. So cost of fulfillment is initially more something which we received from the SD component, but we also took the opportunity here to decouple the cost part because we see that sometimes also other sender components can send dedicated cost of fulfillment items. Acquisition cost, again, similar to what you already knew from the classic contract management. Costing-based profitability analysis, costing-based COPA is still a topic, especially in the on-premise track, and obviously we had to look into that and enable that feature again. Then with the sales SD integration, there's a number of integration scenarios like the finalization date, through a reason for rejection, which could be triggered from SD, proof of delivery, release order, acceptance date. So those items were added. When we look at the BRIM scenarios, commercial accounting invoicing, consumption-based fulfillments were done. And one typical question is usually, okay, if I now start with classic contract management, how do I get to the optimized contract management? Well, ideally with 2020, we will advise customers obviously to start to look into that functionality from the beginning. But obviously we have to take into account that we have a big customer base. So what you will find hopefully also then in the 2020 release is a migration program. This is what the team has worked on to be able to move customers from the classic version into the optimized version. Extensibility, very important. We have seen many implementations where enhancements were necessary. In S/4HANA, there's a new extensibility tool. It's called key user extensibility, and also here we added options to use that tool. And what is very important to our user community is specifically how to explain the integration to the sender components or the flow of documents between the operational components like SD. So there we added a new Fiori app for explaining this document flow, but also we translated some of the apps I mentioned earlier as ABAP reports into the Fiori stack. So you will find a display change history and also dedicated apps for a revenue explanation and an explanation for the allocated amount. So these were the core enhancements for the optimized contract management. The second major area was the integration topic, and I don't have here an architecture picture put on the screen, but if we wanted to draw that picture, you would see first of all the sender components like SD, BRIM, CRM, or S/4HANA service, third party, which then goes into what we call inbound processing. So basically, data from these operational systems is translated into so-called revenue accounting items, and then after those revenue accounting items have been processed, you will see the revenue contracts in contract management. And we also used the 2020 release to renovate this integration following the name optimized. We also call this here optimized inbound processing versus the classic inbound processing. Again, this is optional for customers. What did we want to achieve with that? So first of all, with 2020, we plan to have an integration for SD, for BRIM, and for third-party applications. And what we heard quite often is that customers wish to have a more near real-time processing of the revenue accounting items. So you have an order created, and that immediately creates then the revenue contract. Some customers try to achieve that by running the reports multiple times, every half hour or hour. Still, obviously, that was not the perfect setup. So we decided to look into this integration, and we now, with the 2020 release, we plan to offer an option that you can have a near real-time processing for the order creation and update, the fulfillments and the invoices, and as a fourth item, the cost. The cost was usually tied to the fulfillment part, but we found it as a good setup to separate the cost part from the actual fulfillment. That's one area. Secondly, we still have to assume that not everything always runs fine, and as a result, there's also a new Fiori app to manage what we call here postponed revenue accounting items. If there's any issue like GL account cannot be derived or whatsoever, then this would end up in a work list, and then as a result, a user could go through that. And finally, for the consumption with external components, we will also offer dedicated APIs, and these APIs should be governed through the application interface framework. That's also in the plans and in the works from development. Finally, and that's my last slide, we had also saw the need for looking into the disclosures and analytical capabilities. The add-on again looked at options which were available in the NetWeaver stack. So we used data extractors, we used WebDynPro, and based on these data sources. Being in S4HANA, obviously, we had now the chance to renew that. As a result, you will find a lot of so-called core data services or CDS views in the system, analytical views that look into the data with a much better performance, obviously. And also here, you see additional reports which had been provided. This aggregation was already available in 1909. But what we plan to add is the contract balance, total open revenue, to be recognized revenue, revenue catch-up, and a contract balance movement report. For contract balance movements, obviously, there's many different movement types, but we try to specifically look into what a common set could be, and have now, I think, a very good setup for the 2020 release to cover the core requirements which we have seen in IFRS 15. So this is a little outlook. All of the last three items, as I mentioned before, is a labs preview. I hope that we will have another user group, and we can also then share a little demo and how the Fioris look like. And yes, we also hope that these features and new functionalities will be heavily adopted. Again, if you have questions also after this meeting or over the course of 2020 and how much the 2020 release functionalities would be a good fit for you, we are more than happy if you reach out to us, and we could then address your questions. With that, I would like to hand back to Pete and John.
Okay, thanks, Volkmar. We just had one quick question. Maybe you could clarify with a quick sentence, and then we'll go to the next presentation. But they were asking about day-based revenue recognition. So maybe you would clarify, because I think that was introduced in 1909, day-based calculations. Maybe just a quick sentence on that.
Yeah, so basically what that means is that if you have frequent contract changes, and these contract changes happen, let's say mid-month, so for instance, you have now a change on the 4th of June, and then maybe another change on the 23rd of July. These dates could have an impact on how the allocation works. And what we now, starting with 1909, take into account is basically these days, this day time frame. Yeah. So basically, you would then reflect the allocated amounts based on the 5th of June, instead of the last day of June. So in the past, we took more a periodic or period view. We always looked at the whole period and said, okay, this change is now relevant for the whole period, versus starting with 909, we have the option now to say, okay, this change happened in between the month, and as a result, we have to also take into account the days. Hope that helps.
Yep, that's good. Thanks, Volkmar. And thanks, Gerald. All right, John, I think we're ready to go to the next presentation.
That'd be Ankus, right?
It would actually be no. I think it's
SAP.
Serbian. Yeah.
Serbi? There we go.
Yeah. So
hang on one second. Serbi.
So we're very happy that Serbi's able to join us. She's actually the first customer, SAP IT, that rolled out RAR, and so we're very happy that they're able to spend a few minutes and give us the latest update on their implementation at SAP. Over to you, Serbi.
All right, thank you, Pete and John. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you for the confirmation. So my name is Surbhi Thakur, and I lead the IT Revenue Accounting COE team. Our team implemented the revenue accounting and reporting solution for SAP. And as Pete mentioned, ours was a lighthouse implementation. What that means is we were the first ones ever to implement the solution. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our implementation journey and lessons learned. But let me first get started by providing you a snapshot of where we stand today in our adoption of revenue accounting at SAP. So we are currently on RAR S4HANA on-premise 1909. We recently upgraded from S4HANA 1809 to 1909 a couple of months ago. We have 115 SAP company codes live on RAR globally in the IFRS 15 accounting principle. All of SAP's revenue streams or lines of business, namely cloud, services, on-premise, they're all configured in RAR. And when I say cloud, all the different business models like subscription, network, consumption, and for services, we have consulting, education, and support, different businesses that are currently live on RAR. We have about 2.6 million IFRS 15 contracts in the productive system, and approximately there are around 66,000 contracts that are created in a month. Now, during month-end close and quarter-end close, the closing activities are achieved within the first 3 days of the month-end close or quarter-end close. So usually our record to report team within the Global Finance and Administration Board area at SAP, they are the ones who perform the closing activities, but they're able to successfully close all the different company codes for that specific period in RAR within 3 days. And finally, our implementation is highly scalable. What that means is we continue to activate RAR for new company codes. Anytime SAP acquires another company, we migrate their legacy revenue into RAR, activate them into RAR. And anytime there's a new business model, we also integrate it into our current implementation of RAR. So moving on, let me just provide you an overview of what our team does. So as I mentioned, we are the ones who implemented RAR. So we are responsible for the upkeep of the solution, and we are continuously working on automating and streamlining the revenue recognition process. Some of the services that we offer is IFRS 15 compliance. So the guidelines are set, and basically they're set by the corporate financial reporting organization within SAP, and then we implement it into RAR from a more IT perspective. Anytime there's a version upgrade, new feature pack, support pack, it's our team that does all of these upgrades. Any programs and projects concerning revenue recognition, again, our team gets involved and implements it in RAR. And as I mentioned before, anytime there's a new acquisition, it's our team that performs the revenue migration from the legacy revenue systems into SAP's implementation of RAR. Anytime there's a new business model, again, it's our team that gets involved. So we have, in the past few years, a lot of new business models coming up. For example, consumption models like pay-as-you-go, a bunch of hybrid models. So it's our team that integrates it and makes it functional and RAR. And obviously, we also participate in any end-to-end code to revenue process changes, because anytime there's any changes on the code side of things or on the order management or invoice management side of things, usually it has some implication on revenue recognition. So our team makes sure that we get involved in all these discussions up front, and we take care of any impacts on revenue recognition within the RAR implementation. Some of our responsibilities are, again, safeguarding month-end close, quarter-end close, so just ensuring that revenue accounting is stable and our business stakeholders are able to successfully carry out the closing activities. We provide best practices and scalable models for future implementation. Again, we get involved in projects. We also help our business stakeholders with external audits. So if, for example, they ask us to, if they need us to extract information or analyze something, we help them with that. And we also help with the yearly SOX control testing that is carried out by the SAP Governance, Risk and Compliance team. And on the side, we also work on continuous innovation. So what that means is our team creates apps. We are working on a few conversational AI use cases just to enhance our end users' experience. Most of our team is based out of Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, but we have a few team members in Waldorf, Germany. Our operations, meaning all the ticketing, monitoring, is carried out by a service provider in Bangalore, and we also have some contractors on the team. And as I mentioned, most of our stakeholders are in the global finance and administration board area within SAP. So there's various teams, the record report team, controlling, corporate financial reporting, O2I, they're all our stakeholders. Okay, so what was our rationale behind implementing revenue accounting and reporting within SAP? So there were a few key business drivers, like simplification. We overall wanted to simplify the revenue recognition process within SAP. We wanted to harmonize how revenue recognition was being done between different entities. And of course, we had the looming compliance topic where SAP had to be IFRS 15 compliant by 2018. And last but not least, we wanted it to be an external showcase for our customers, right? So initially, we had a lot of homegrown solution which we used within SAP to recognize revenue. And we wanted to move away from that and have a single source of truth for all the revenue information across all of SAP's entities. And that was one of the driving decisions behind our decision to implement this solution. And then, of course, we wanted to implement it and show it to our external customers that the solution is market ready and they could also use it. Okay, so this slide talks a little bit about our implementation journey. So the entire revenue accounting implementation program was primarily divided into two phases. In the first phase, we aimed at automating the revenue recognition process by implementing RAR for all of SAP, for all of its lines of businesses, for all of its acquired companies. And then in the second phase of the program, we concentrated on transitioning to IFRS 15. So we embarked on this journey in 2014, and even before revenue accounting and reporting solution was commercially available to the customers. And back then, it was decided by the board that we should go ahead and implement it first for Ariba, which was one of the acquired companies. and SAP acquired it back in 2012. So in 2014, we started off with the project, did fit gap analysis, and in the meantime, when the solution was available, we started with the migration process. And again, in the process, we were learning the solution also, so we divided into various phases, finally going live with all of Ariba in March. So one more thing I should mention is that we went into a co-innovation model, meaning we were working very closely and co-innovating with our product engineering team. And a lot of our project plan was meticulously designed, and it was completely dependent on the product strategy. So as and when certain functionalities were going to be made available, we decided to go live with those specific lines of business accordingly. So which is why you see that we've got Ariba. Once we went live with that, we were able to start a parallel project to bring success factors on RAR. And then when we first went live, we were on the first version of the RAR add-on, so RA 1.0. Eventually, we upgraded to RA 1.1, and then we started to implement RAR for all of SAP company codes, right? So since we already had some experience implementing RAR for Ariba and SuccessFactors, where the main line of business was cloud, we first decided to target the ratable line of business, which is again cloud. It's the ratable fulfillment type. So we went live with all of cloud for all of SAP company codes. In between, we went live with some other acquisitions like Fieldglass and Rombi. And then we targeted PIT. PIT stands for point in time, which is our on-premise line of business. It's software and maintenance. And then services, which is POC. That's percentage of completion. So again, one of the reasons why we split up on-premise into 3 different phases was because of the sheer volume of contracts that we had to migrate. So one of the other considerations that we took during implementation is that we decided never to go live during quarter end close. And also, in most cases, we wanted to complete migration for specific company codes between month and close, right? So that we could then set that specific company code from migration to production, and then our business could then close the period for that specific company code in RAR. So hence we spread it out, and by mid of 2017, we had successfully implemented revenue accounting for all of SAP in the old accounting principle, which was IFRS. And then in the second half of 2017, we concentrated more on IFRS 15 transition. So we upgraded to RA 1.3 because all the transition-related functionalities were available only with RA 1.3. And we carried out multiple iterations of dry run. And then finally, we were able to transition all of the IFRS contracts into IFRS 15, which was again a huge migration initiative, almost a migration initiative. And then finally in 2018, we were on IFRS 15. So this slide basically talks about the phase when we were implementing RAR, so between 2014 to 2018, and again, different milestones since then, right? So like I said, during this time between 2014 to 2018, we were implementing RAR, and some of the key milestones we reached were we had 17 revenue automation go lives, 3 version upgrades. We did 264 IT developments, so Z reports, Y reports, or custom functionalities. We migrated about 1.3 million contracts, and of those 1.3, we transitioned 235,000 of those IFRS contracts into IFRS 15. And since going live with IFRS 15, we have been busy still yet. So we converted our ERP system from ECC to S/4HANA. So that was, again, a big initiative for us. And we've had 3 revenue automation go lives, again, bringing new acquisitions into RAR or going live on RAR with a new business model. Like I said, we had 2 version upgrades. So we converted from ECC to S/4HANA. So we first went on RAR 1809 and then most recently on 1909. And since Q2 of 2018, again, we've been continuously working in a more agile fashion, delivering around 272 user stories till now. And like I mentioned before, we have 2.6 million contracts in our productive system. Another key point to mention here is that when we first went live with RAR, we were using the SD integration to RAR, and we had also a custom integration with our training system that my colleague Deepti will talk about in a minute. But in 2019, we also started using the FICA RAR integration, meaning our revenue information was not just coming from SD orders, but also from provider contracts. Okay. So with that, I would hand it over to Deepti.
Hey, real quick, Surbi, there's a question. Your percent of complete, do you get that out of project systems, or how do you manage that?
It's through controlling.
Controlling.
So a percentage of completion. So basically what we did was we waited for the KKAK integration with RAR was available. So KKAK is the results analysis functionality in SAP controlling. So we basically, the controllers execute KKAK transaction and other related results analysis transaction in our productive system, and the percentage of completion then gets copied over from results analysis into revenue accounting. So it's automatic POC calculation, and also in some cases, if the business so desires, it's also manual POC, meaning they do the calculation outside, and if they want to, they can put in a manual percentage of completion.
Great. Awesome, thank you.
So Surbi, just before you transition, I think this is a great slide.
Which one?
This one, yeah, this shows the phased
Okay.
approach, right? But could you just point out there where you jumped to 1809 S4? Some people are asking about that.
Okay, all right, so this is just the implementation, right? So it just gives you the timelines between 2014 to 2018. So I should point it out here.
Okay, that's
so
fine.
basically we went, so this was when we converted from ECC to S4HANA.
Okay, so it was early
So this
early
was back in
2019.
August, yeah, August 2019.
Okay,
And
August.
then in April, we upgraded from 1809 to 1909.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, okay. So over to you, Deepti.
Thank you, Surbi. And you guys can hear me, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for creating a segue on the interfaces. I would like to take you guys through the architecture of revenue accounting in our system. As Surbi mentioned, we do have integration with SD, and recently we also did integration with FICA so that provider contracts from there can come in to revenue accounting as well to create revenue accounting contracts. Along with that, we also do have an integration with a training and education system, which is an ILP system. This is where we had to make use of the custom RAR classes so that the information from the training system can come into revenue accounting system. When we went through the different business streams, the work streams we have at SAP, and depending on the businesses, we do have different fulfillment types used today. For an example, for cloud business, we do use fulfillment type, which is time-based, readable. Most of our services and consulting go through POC. For POC, we do have an integration with result analysis, as well as we do have a custom implementation to get an activity-based data of the accrual reports we have created, which will get that information for the the fulfillment data as well. Also, we do have some rare event-based fulfillment, which depends on invoicing, for an example. But along with that, with IFRS 15, we did implement a custom fulfillment logic for one of the business work streams, where depending on a certain date, an effective date, we call it, that's when the fulfillment happens, or that's when we recognize the revenue. And we did have some custom implementation needed to be done to make sure, the fulfillment of those performance obligations are done. We currently do not have any fulfillment RAR classes. We do not use them. We do have a variety of body implementations done because how complex the business rules can be. But it was never an issue for us to implement it because of all the availability of bodies we have. For an allocation, for an example, we do with IFRS 15, there were certain rules which were introduced where we had to use allocation body to be able to make sure we are not only using SSP-based allocation, but some other complex rules. For SSPs related cases, we have done multiple different versions of SSP implementation. That is, we do use SSP body as well as in some cases that SSP information comes from our operational systems in conditions in terms of SD orders. Or very rare cases, we are also using BRF plus function modules to derive that SSP. We also do have alternate currency conversion implementation done. Again, with IFRS 15, we did activate the change type. As you guys are aware, the contract modification and the change estimates have been activated for us in IFRS 15. We also do have a custom implementation, which is being done by the body implementation again. As for the standard revenue accounting, the order type and the item category is what decides if a certain sales order line or any operational line item is relevant or not. SAP did have a special requirement to have this RevRec relevancy depending on the material, and that's where we did our custom implementation. We do have a custom table which also looks at these materials to decide if certain sales order line is relevant or not. For FICA implementation, we are using most of the time standard implementation, but we do have a custom implementation there as well in the inbound RISE section. And we are using the default contract combination feature as well. Thank you. Okay, there are certain lessons we definitely learned during implementation. Haven't been part of the project since day one, but maybe day 4 with Survey. And something we definitely learned from our migration effort is there is a considerable migration effort, especially when you have to migrate your legacy revenue data from your legacy systems to revenue accounting. So there has to be a process put in place where how much data needs to be migrated. We also have to validate that data once for the consistency on what kind of data which is getting to revenue accounting. Definitely after migration, the validation of that data in revenue accounting needs to be done, and a process needs to be set up for that. One thing I would like to iterate, which Surbi did mention, is about migration efforts had to be done during MEC timeframe. We could not use QEC because how important that is. We always chose non-QEC periods to do our migration. Migration had to be done between that time frame, since the company code stays in your migration status, and you cannot set it to productive until you have finished migration of all the data. What that really meant was we had to practice. That is, we had to do dry runs to check the consistency of the data, do the validations of the data, and then you do the final migration on the decided period. Of course, after migration is done, we had to again make sure the testing of these day-to-day contracts which are getting created newly, as well as the migrated contracts need to be carried out. Definitely our dry runs helped us to make sure we are in the right status then. The next one, definitely plan the the change management efforts in terms of who does what in the system. You do have different stakeholders. You have R2R doing closing. You have CFR looking at the data, revenue accountants looking at the data. Make sure the different roles and profiles are provided to the end users so they can display all the data and the reports along with it. Let's go into this RAI processing and posting job schedules. So what is RAI, right? Revenue accounting items. Whatever changes you make in your operational system comes to revenue accounting via this RAIs, revenue accounting items. And I know we mentioned earlier, if there is anything wrong with those RAIs, they go in error, and we talked about postponing these, this revenue. So as this information is very important to come to revenue accounting system, and of course, once the revenue accounting contract is created, we have to do the posting, which goes to FI. Now, if you do want real-time information or the latest information coming from your operational documents to your FI, we had to make sure how often these RAI processing as well as the posting jobs needs to be scheduled. For us, it works something like twice a week. Every day we do RAI processing, we do twice a week posting jobs. But again, this all needs to be scheduled to match your business needs. Also, you have to make sure you're not overloading the system with, every minute RAI processing, for an example. So this needs to be taken care of. That's something we definitely, had to put a process in for. About the reports, the standard product does come with some great reports, reconciliation reports. But of course, depending on your needs, what your CFR wants, what accounting managers want, you will need to create some custom reports and definitely plan for them. It is very possible since the data is available, and you do have different function modules and the tables available, but definitely plan for these custom reports. Another lesson learned, which absolutely I think keeps us on our toes, is any change upstream, any process change upstream from code to order, revenue accounting team needs to be involved. Even if we are very much at the tail end of the whole process, we had to make sure we are in the conversation when there is any business model changes. Because at the end, any business model change will affect your revenue, and you need to be in the conversation of that, which has been, I think, the biggest lesson learned for us, but definitely very useful as we go through this process. So with that, I would like to give it to the next presenter.
Thank you, Deepti.
Thank you, Surbhi.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Deepti, thank you so much, especially for those lessons learned. And if there's more questions, sometimes we can't get to them all, so just let people know that we will, try to collect answers to the questions and send them in the follow-up.
Okay, so Ankus is next.
Yep.
All right.
I'm ready.
We have our, okay, great. We have our SAP
All ready, Ankus?
to do the topic deep dive. Yep, go ahead.
So I hope you're able to see the screen and hear me properly.
Yes. We're seeing user group meeting RAR fiscal year change.
Yeah, I'm just trying to go to the slideshow mode. Yep, I'm there.
There you go.
Yeah, so thanks for making me the presenter. And just to introduce myself, I'm part of the IFRS 15 consulting COE team, and I work out of Newton Square or close to Newton Square. So today we'll be discussing about one of the customer scenario where we got involved actually after the RAR implementation was over, and this was a very typical scenario where the customer has to make a change to their fiscal year, and that's when we got involved to analyze what would be the impact on RAR and how can we get through that. So to start with, just to give a synopsis of what we will be covering in this presentation would be the customer scenario, a little bit of introduction about the shortened fiscal year, and in next slide we would cover the shortened fiscal year impact on RAR, then some key highlights about the customer engagement and the SAP consulting team's engagement model. And of course, we would open then floor for the question and answers. Yeah, so just to start with the customer scenario, as I mentioned that as a team, normally we get involved with a lot of projects, mostly the implementation of RAR projects, RAR as a component in S4HANA or as an add-on. But this particular in this particular scenario, we got a chance to get involved with a customer, one of the early adopters for the RAR, and they got recently acquired, and they were the digital high-tech company. They got acquired with another big SAP customer. So they both are on different instances. Now the challenge which they come up with is the alignment of their fiscal year. Normally, we would have heard that when the companies get acquired, they would like to align their fiscal years just for the sake of transparency with their accounting documents and their accounting statements, especially the 10Ks, and also for the leadership to have a clear look at the revenues and the balances, as well as for the investors to have a better look in terms of how the company is doing. So that was one of the base requirement after the acquisition, where the company wanted an alignment on their fiscal year. And when we have such kind of scenarios in SAP presented towards towards any team, what comes to our mind is the shortened fiscal year. That is the most appropriate way to align the companies. And I'll talk more about shortened fiscal year in the upcoming slides. But yes, in this case as well, this was the preferred way of aligning these two companies. And there is a team in SAP which is called the SLO, or the System Landscape Optimization. They are basically responsible for making such kind of changes to the system. So yeah, if you look at the customer scenario till now, what we know is that there were two companies which got into an acquisition or merger. They had to align their fiscal year, and the chosen way of the alignment was, of course, the shortened fiscal year. So I would just try to explain what a shortened fiscal year is to the audience who are not really aware about this particular terminology. So let's consider if we are talking about a calendar year or a fiscal year. In a normal scenario, we talk about 12 periods, starting from maybe January to December, or different companies follow different fiscal year variants. So what we are talking about is basically shortening those fiscal years. So reducing that normal 12 period scenario to a lesser periods. In this case, and I'll discuss more, the customer or the SLO team decided that to align it within the two companies, the fiscal year should be shortened by 4 months, and instead of closing it at the end of 12th period, we would be closing the year at the 8th period. So if you just look at the diagram over there, or the representation of the fiscal years, we see that the company A is basically the one who has acquired company B, and they follow a different pattern of the fiscal years. And when we implement the shortened fiscal year, or the SLO team implemented the shortened fiscal year, they basically cut short the year 2020 by 4 periods, and when they start the next month or the next period as per the configuration, it will then align with the company A. So at the end, the result is that company B aligns in terms of a fiscal year with company A. Now there is another challenge which comes with that, and is that we miss kind of an alignment on the numbering of the year. For that, the SLO team also has a tool which would ideally convert your historical data and to align the number of the years. So that was a little bit of background on what shortened fiscal year would mean to a person who's not very much into this kind of configurations. Coming towards the impact of shortened fiscal year on RAR, the basic objectives, as I also briefly discussed in the beginning, that was to have an alignment in terms of the financial statement, the 10Ks, as well as to have a single source of truth or the single version of truth, so that we have a better revenue visibility when it comes to leadership or the executive uh, managers or the revenue managers or even the investors who are looking at the organization from outside while they're trying to make some investments. So that was one of the biggest thing which the customer team has presented to us, saying that this is something really important to the company which they got acquired with, and the leadership is totally looking into having a single source of revenue recognition for the better visibility. Then, of course, one of the other objective was to have, so as we know that this particular customer who got acquired has made some investment in terms of revenue recognition by implementing RAR, and they were, of course, some kind of enhancements made. So they have already invested some amount of their effort and energy. Every company wants to protect their investment, as well as since they would be targeting to move into the same landscape at some point of time, and they would want to harmonize their org structure, and to reduce the TCO, they would want first to talk in the same accounting language. So that was one of the other objective which was presented to us. And of course, we have been talking and listening a lot about the S4HANA upgrade. And since both these customers and both these organizations are SAP customers, they are definitely looking forward to have some kind of an upgrade in future in their digital transformation journey towards S4HANA. So for that, it was really necessary to have these two organizations on the same page. And and to just focus on RAR, we had some impact on RAR. And when we were talking to the customer and discussing their scenario, we came up with a list of certain risk areas, or I would say potential risk areas, where we thought this whole change of fiscal year could have a huge impact, or at least it would pose a risk of an impact. So that would require some kind of a regression testing or some kind of an upfront check on how these new functionalities are behaving. So of course, those who have been working with RAR of late, they already know about the reconciliation keys, but just to give a little bit of background, the reconciliation keys are basically a technical field within RAR, and a lot of things like revenue schedule and your fulfillments and def items revolve around these reconciliation keys. And this key is basically a combination of the period or the year and the period, and some kind of a status of the posting jobs. So when we change the fiscal year, let's say if I'm saying that I'm reducing the fiscal year from a particular date, we saw that there would be a huge impact on the reconciliation keys. In fact, we would have to regenerate these reconciliation keys. So that takes a big impact on this area. Similarly, if you change the reconciliation keys, it does have impact on the revenue schedule. And we know that RAR has its own steps or processes to close the fiscal year or a period. Then definitely there was an impact on the fiscal year period closing. Then since we have a lot of reporting within RAR, and customer had their own reports which was pointing out to the existing database tables, it would definitely have some kind of a visibility impact on the reporting as well as the planning and forecasting. Then we also thought it could be a good idea to have some regression testing on the contract changes which happen in the back dates. So maybe a retrospective kind of a change, because if we try to make changes to the periods which have already closed and we have changed the fiscal years and shortened it, this could have a potential impact as well. Then one of the other thing which was a potential risk was, of course, the whole consistency of the POB and the contract structure, and we really had to focus on, and that was one of the prime tasks, to maintain the consistency even after when we have shifted the fiscal year period. Then one other area which we thought could have impact is exchange rate difference, because we know that the exchange rate differences potentially works on the dates, and each date you can maintain your own exchange rate differences. So if you do anything related to the date and the period and years, this whole exchange rate thing can have some issues. Then in terms of the dual reporting, there could be something where there are two accounting principles set up in the RAR box. Then we could have some impact with both the accounting principles. Of course, then the one of the biggest thing was the billing and the invoicing. If we, in this particular case, we are talking about SD integration with RAR, where we have billing plans sitting in SD. If we change the dates, then the billing plans have to either align with the new dates and the new periods, as well as if these new periods and the new dates billing plan flow into RAR, we need to assess how that would behave with the current existing contracts. In terms of the key features and the highlights of the whole customer engagement, uh, we since we were presented this about this problem after the go live, so there is obviously no question about implementing the RAR and looking at a project plan with the go live date that would be something after 6 months or maybe 1 year. We are looking at some kind of a deadline or a very time pressing requirement which would have a very small window uh, to get into the system, because we are talking about the period end close. In the period end close, we have, as we know, we get involved with a lot of period end closing. When it comes to financials, there is only a small window of 2 to 3 days, or even in some organization it's few hours, where we could actually sneak in some changes which we want to do at the end of the period or end of the month. One other thing which we were sure about is that if we implement the change, or if we implement the solution which we are giving to the customer, if it once it is implemented, it is definitely difficult to restore it to the previous state, because we would have changed a lot of technical fields in the system using the standard solution. It would be difficult to reinstate. Of course, it is possible to restore the backup of the system from various places, but functionally it might not be possible to restore this solution to the previous state. So that was one big risk which we were getting into. And as I mentioned, that there was of course a limited cutover time. So you can imagine in a real time scenario, when we are doing a period end closing and we have that pressure of making the system back up and running, there is always a small cutover time where we have paused all the current processing in the system, and we are asking the users to pause their daily processing, and within that period of time we really have to do some kind of a solution so that once the system comes up and running, it should be pointing out to the new fiscal year and period. Of course, in such kind of things, when we are making some kind of changes to the system or the configuration, the reconciliation becomes really important. And with the help of the customer, we got the snapshot of the contract balances before we took the before we did the changes about the fiscal year variant, and we try to reconcile it with the balances after the period end closing is done. Then, of course, as I said, we had paused all the daily activities in terms of RAI processing and all the orders which are coming into the system. That has to be reinstated and make sure that the customer or the end users don't feel the change which we have done. in terms of some kind of a delay or some kind of user experience issues. Then we had to freeze the contract modifications in the as I mentioned about the complexity around the contract modification. We had to freeze it for some time and really test in the test system and see how it behaves, so that we can communicate it to the users that what are the guidelines for the contract modifications in the coming periods. Uh, then one other thing which this whole project or this whole engagement presented to us was, of course, the limited exposure to the fiscal year conversion with RAR. This was one of its kind of engagement, and we did not see such kind of engagements in SAP marketplace, or I would say in SAP ecosystem. So this was one of its kind of limited exposure, and we did not had a lighthouse customer or a reference customer to go to and see how this solution might behave. Then one of the biggest challenge, and I will also discuss about this in detail, was about the contracts which are currently in error. This could be because of some conflicts within the contracts, the allocation conflicts, or it could be because of some in-flight checks. We see sometimes that the revenue counting items or the contracts are in error due to the in-flight checks. So the biggest challenge for us was that if till we don't address these errors or these in-flight checks, we really cannot change the reconciliation keys, or we cannot really change even the status of this particular contract because it is in error. And this is a kind of and it's a good check to have on the contracts in error, that until you do not resolve these errors, it is difficult to, or it is impossible to move ahead with these contracts in terms of any kind of conversion. So, and I will discuss more about this when we discuss our engagement model and how we really uh, handled this particular piece. In terms of the engagement highlights, I think it was important to identify few of the contracts which we felt earlier in the game that these set of contracts are going to be the problem child, either because they are too complex in terms of the revenue allocation, or they are too long running contracts where we are looking at a few of the contracts who ran up to 10 years or even more. And it can happen with a lot of companies that there are long running contracts, so that we are so in that case we are talking about more number of reconciliation keys and a special treatment towards these kind of contracts. So that was one of the key thing which we did right in the earlier in the game. Then what we also did correct was multiple mock cutover cycles, because the cutovers can be full of surprises, as we know. So what we did is, in the customer's development or sorry, the test system, we did the multiple cutovers and defined clear steps in terms of what would require at the day of the conversion, or the at the day of the period end closing or the year end closing, when we actually did it. And this was all in collaboration with the customer, of course. As I said that cutover cycles were done, we also did cutover planning with the customer and guided in terms of RAR what would be actually required, maybe in terms of roles and authorizations and the steps we will be executing on their production system to make this whole thing happen. Then, of course, we had to start with the some kind of a proof of concept with the customer. So our team came up with a solid proof of concept, and that was presented to the customer. And later on, it was also showcased in their test system that how actually this particular approach is going to work. And once the customer was in agreement with this whole approach, we had uh, identified a timeline where we would address to some kind of a downtime, maybe 3 to 4 hours of downtime. And once all these changes are made, we were up and running. Also, one good part which is consistent with all the customer engagements and product is the close collaboration within SAP with the product engineering team and the support team which we have within the SAP ecosystem. So that was more of from the customer engagement point of view. At the end, I would just like to you to look at the engagement model in which our team, specifically the IFRS 15 COE team, gets involved. Can get involved with any of the RAR implementations, or even where RAR has been implemented. So there could be various steps where we could get involved, starting from the scenario description or the definition of the scenario, or looking at the current system setup. But here I would really like to highlight the importance of the iterations of the 3 steps which is mentioned in the block, where we kind of plan what we do, and then we really test it out in and out, and after the analysis of the result, it is then ready for the go live. And just to pick up one scenario where we got good results with by following this particular approach, that is the iteration of these 3 steps, was, as I was mentioning in the scenario there, where we had some kind of challenge in terms of the contracts which were currently in error with this particular customer. So we came up with some kind of an approach to resolve these errors, and did a proof of concept first in our internal system, then on the customer system. And while we are trying to test, we face some challenges, and during that time we realized that there could be a better approach, or this particular type of contract might want a special attention. Then we go back to the drawing board and plan it out again, do another kind of a proof of concept within our system, and then again on the customer system, and then try to test. And at the end, what we have is a foolproof procedure through which we could have a successful or a very smooth go live. So I thought it would be an important placeholder for us to look at these 3 steps in the box, where such kind of iterations could really help. So yeah, I think that would be all from my side, Pete and John. I hope I'm giving some minutes back.
Okay,
Of course, there is
okay.
some time for questions, and we can take some questions as well.
We got a minute for questions. John, I don't know if there's one in the chat we want to try. Let me see.
They're all big ones.
I know. All right, I think we'll probably have to just follow up with you, Ankus, on the questions.
All right, no problem. I'll be there.
Yeah. Arnges, thank you for the deep dive topic. And now we go on to the last presentation, which is on the basically an S4 RAR demo in 1909. And this is in the private cloud. So anyway, I think we're seeing I would say a decent customer interest in just, what are the different ways? Sorry, John, was there a question?
Nope, there is a question, but not for now. Just go ahead.
Okay, just what are the different ways that you can use RAR? Of course, we have on-premise, but some customers are now asking about, well, can we consume RAR in the cloud? And so we've been working on some of those situations. We thought this would be useful to show you that, as well as highlight some of the new UI of 1909. John, I'll turn it over to you and Sarah.
Thank you, Pete. Fantastic. Thanks for allowing us to present. So hello, everybody. My name is John Froelich from Bramisol, and it's a privilege to be presenting to all of you. So we are going to talk about this revenue accounting engine in the cloud, as Pete talked about. And we'll kind of give you an overview of what it's all about. We'll talk about the overview of the RAR in the cloud, and then my colleague Sarah Thompson will be giving a 1909 demo in which you'll see the solution that we've built. And then I'll just quickly remind everybody who Bramisol is if we have time, and we'll take some Q&A. But we'll focus mostly, Pete, on the demo.
Right, and clarity, this will just be a 30-minute session, yeah.
Yes, so. No, it's a couple of hours, Pete. Okay, so, why are we here? I think Pete, touched on all of these, and I'll go through this quickly, is, we had a lot of customers who were coming to us, both SAP customers as well as customers who don't have SAP or are migrating to others, and wanted to know if they could create a standalone engine, a RAR engine with all the great functionality that is available for SAP, but not have to be in ERP. And so we took that into account. A lot of customers have and want to continue to receive data from multiple sources, whether it's from outside sources such as Salesforce.com or older SAP systems. They wanted the processes and alignment so that it sends the appropriate journal entries supporting ASC 606 and IFRS 15, so alignment with that. A lot of customers, have been saying we want it based on SAP S/4HANA and RAR. How do we set it up quickly? We know that RAR projects generally take a fair amount of time, and as Pete and I always say, we've never heard anyone say it was less complicated than I expected, but we needed a way to make it quick, consumable at an attractive cost, and it sits in the cloud. But with the concept of being scalable and secure, with a modern user interface, and could be leveraged to scale SAP S/4HANA ERP when, maybe not if, but certainly when needed. So this is kind of an overall diagram of how we've set that up. We have in the left-hand side, you'll see the operational or order systems, and those could be anything from SAP ECC, Oracle, Microsoft, Workday, but it can also be from order systems such as Salesforce.com, Sugar, CRM, other order systems you may have. We can take a universal flat file format or any others that you might have, and we feed that using some tools that we've developed into SAP RAR and modify and create the appropriate RAI structures so that we can feed that into SAP RAR. And in the cloud, what we do, and you'll see a 1909 cloud system in a few minutes, is we've coupled together, or we've taken the SAP RAR, created a minimal, if you will, setup of SAP S/4HANA Finance with the appropriate GL reporting. And then we do the appropriate calculations in RAR, feed that to an S/4HANA journal, universal journal, and then create an output that then takes those finance documents, those journal entries, those adjustments, as you saw from Pete's funnel, and you can feed that into your core GL, whether it's SAP ECC, Oracle, JD Edwards, Microsoft, Workday, Infor, et cetera, et cetera. So with that in mind, what I'll do is then I'm going to turn this over, Sarah, to you, because I'm sure what people really want to see is the system. So I'm going to make you the presenter. Sarah, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. All right, you should be presenter. There we go. We can see your screen.
Okay. Not sure. Are you seeing the correct one? Are you seeing the demo?
I'm seeing a beautiful set of Fiori tiles in a screen. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. So hello, everyone. We are in the latest RAR demo system. So we are in the 1909 private cloud demo system. So when you come in, there's a few new changes. The biggest thing I want to cover as we kind of go through the demo system, it's a very similar process. Whether you're in ECC, you're on 1709, 1809, 1909, your demo, or not your demo, your RAR system process isn't going to change. You're going to be able to handle the contracts the same. What's going to change is as SAP continues to roll out new S4 systems, they're looking to kind of optimize your processes. So being able to have new tiles that can take you down into the information that you need, as well as utilizing the embedded analytics. So I want to go through what some of those new tiles look like, what we can do within the system, and then really focus on some of the reporting capabilities. There's embedded analytics within the tool that you can utilize with RAR as well as other information. And then also, if we have time, want to showcase a couple of Baramisol's disclosure reports that actually enable you to take the information that you're gathering within the revenue accounting tool and produce those disclosures right away. So if we first come in, you'll notice we've got the tiles here. I've kind of broken them out: revenue management, we've got operations. We can kind of scroll down. We can see some of the reporting capabilities, some of the reports that have been there within the revenue tool, and then some new ones that we're actually able to utilize with the embedded analytics. But if we first start with revenue contracts, you notice it kind of changed a little bit. It's been enhanced for revenue accounting in the 1909 system, so it's a little bit of a different look and feel. What we can see is we've automatically started looking at some of our contracts here on the left. What you can do and what John kind of talked about, and I don't know if some of our customers are aware of this or which of our customers are actually utilizing this, but there are contracts that can be brought into the system from external sources. So I'm going to go back to some old contracts that I do know that I have out there. And I can actually drill into these contracts. So before I go through the full flow, I just want to show you how you can kind of see other contracts that are out there. We've got a different nomenclature for contracts that come in from external systems versus contracts that are created within SD. What we can see here is we've got an operational document. Now, I haven't actually created a drill down capability into Excel. So I know for me, when this contract was created, I know it was created in Excel. For users to be able to utilize that information to figure that out, we can actually scroll across and we'll be able to see the sender component, so it came from external, as well as a source upload. So we can see that it came from a PC file. So when John was talking about it being private cloud, it can be a standalone that we set up. It can pull from any source. You'll be able to see that it's not just from SD, but we've also got those external sources. And what SAP has done is they've allowed for you to create attachments. So if you do want to have a creation where you've got drill down capabilities into external sources, that's great. But if you also, create contracts in Excel using the Excel upload, I can actually upload my contract as well. So this is the template that was given by SAP to allow me to automatically just create a simple contract. And I can upload that into the contract so you can still see the auditability, so be able to see where that contract came from. So I just wanted to quickly point that out before we get into the full flow. So I can come back. I'm going to start at manage my revenue contracts again. So I'm going to start with a contract that I have created. So we'll start with an IFRS contract. So this is just going to be a simple contract, came from SD. I can drill back into the SD document if I wanted to. There's always drill back capabilities, so none of that has changed from ECC into S4. So I can drill back and see here I've got my contract with my different material all attached. And then now everything here in my performance obligation structure. So you can see which material or which performance obligation were on my sales order, and then which are added or leading or linked performance obligations as well. We've got our full contractual standalone selling price allocated amounts here. We can see we've got all the different fulfillment types still available. We've still got drill down capabilities into the revenue schedule. The revenue schedule is going to give you all of the information that you need in order to view the contract over the life of the contract and what your revenue is going to look like. So we can already start recognizing revenue for the last 2 months. For premium support, we just need to deliver our router in order to see
So Sarah,
our fulfillment.
just one, sorry
Yeah.
to pause you, just one comment on the revenue schedule, because this is the part I really like. So this revenue schedule shows you, right, the performance obligation by installment that's already calculated, right? And so this is essentially a forecast, right, of actual and plan. So just so people realize that this is there, and it's a really great feature. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Pete. So you're able to see over the life of your contract when you'll be able to recognize the revenue. So we'll notice there's a couple unscheduled. So for example, something that might have a delivery date, or you're not sure when an installation is going to take place, those are going to be set as unscheduled. But anything that has a set date, you've got a monthly plan out there, you're going to be able to see that month by month to the exact date. We'll also be able to see if there's any costs. So if you're including cost, against your revenue, you're able to see that simultaneously. So it's going to post against the cost as it does the revenue for each performance obligation. So I want to leave our revenue schedule up. I'm going to quickly just go in and deliver on the hardware or the router that we have here, and then we'll be able to reflect on how that updates our revenue schedule, as well as being able to go in and actually post some revenue. So we can create an outbound delivery. For our hardware that's out there. So we can see we've got our router. Let's just go ahead and pick and deliver on our post goods issue. Now within the system, obviously everything can flow directly through, but we also still have the revenue accounting monitor. So for a lot of end users, you may not know the revenue accounting monitor. It may be an IT tool for a lot of customers. It may be one specific job to kind of go through and monitor as things take place or different contracts come in. But from an operation standpoint into revenue accounting, the revenue accounting items monitor really allows for you to see if there are any issues with sales documents flowing through to revenue accounting. So we can see here for my delivery that I have for this particular order, as well as the sales order, there were no errors that went through. Everything was processed just fine. We can see we've got our contract names, our numbers here as well, down to the performance obligations. And then I can always, again, drill back into the contract from the revenue accounting monitor. So if there were any issues, it would tell us up front. If there are not, we can actually go in, refresh our revenue schedule, and now we're going to see that we also have our router as a scheduled revenue. So we went from about 3,000 up to 1,100 or 100,015, as well as our recognized cost went up. What we'll notice is we still don't have any posted revenue. So posted revenue is going to take place either daily or end of the month, or however often, if you want it in real time in S4, however often things get fulfilled, then the performance obligations will then be triggered for posted revenue. So we can actually go in from here, and we'll go back and take a look at our posted revenue for our contract 2216. So I'm going to transfer time-based revenue. I'm going to calculate assets and liabilities, and then I'm also going to.
And you have IFRS in there, but it could be GAAP or any other of the local GAAP or regulations,
Yep,
right?
it could be any of them. Any accounting principle you have. I just focused on this one particular contract, but again, if I wanted to do it for 2215 for local GAAP, it would be the same, because as your revenue contracts are created, depending on how many accounting principles you have, you could have one sales document that leads to multiple revenue accounting contracts based off of your rules and your accounting principle. So what I'm doing is I'm actually just transferring back-end job. So you'll be calculating the assets and liabilities, you'll be calculating time-based revenue, and then you'll actually get into a posting run. So the tool actually allows for you to simulate what your contract is going to look like before it gets posted into your revenue. So I've got just my one contract here. If I wanted to look across all contracts that are possible up for postings, I could do so as well. Should I post the right one? I did. Let's see. One second. Let me just see.
It's the Murphy law of demos, live demos. There's
Yeah.
always a little one thing. So while you're looking at that, Sarah, just let us know. We'll just talk a little bit about, the the revenue schedule, which I really like. Also, the other thing is the slice and dice. And we used to show this with the Universal Journal on things like the trial balance reports and the analytics. And hopefully in a little bit, Sarah will be able to show you some of the analytics here that are now built into RAR on S4. So Sarah, you back on track?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, great, no problem. No problem.
I'll just put in last month. We'll look.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go back and look. So I'm starting to think, I don't know if they've closed the period. So we're looking at the different GL accounts that actually get posted. So like Pete said, you'll come in and this will be kind of a subledger that you can view. You'll be able to see all the GL accounts that are available to be posted, all the amounts that are going to be posted. And then actually as you drill down into performance obligation, you can see the contracts that are there that can be posted. You've got premium support upgrades, different postings that can take place, and then all the way down into the posting level. So I can actually view for this one contract, there's one out there, 21703, actually view all the postings that can take place. And it's going to tell me deferred cost that's out there, receivable adjustments, the posting to the correct revenue, and then what those actual amounts are. So it's going to give us local currency, group currency. You can have as many currencies that you have in SAP or in S4 to be able to see those postings, and it does the currency conversion automatically based off of what you have set up in your SAP system. So that doesn't change from ECC to S4.
Right. Of course, the beauty of that has to do with audits too, right? Because it makes it that much easier when your auditor comes in and says, well, show me how that was done. There you have it all in black and white, and they can follow a process. So.
Yes, so yeah, being able to see exactly when the posting took place, who posted them, when they were posted, there's always an audit trail within SAP. So from here, you can go ahead, you can switch to posting mode if you wanted to actually post on those contracts, so you can post those. It doesn't fall within the post period. Give me a second. Just quickly post that for, there we go. So we've posted those few. What I do want to do is I want to showcase some of the reporting capabilities. So you can kind of go through the flow of starting at a contract, delivering and posting revenue, but really some of the newer capabilities from our ECC customers into S4 is the embedded analytics. So I kind of want to showcase how you can view not only your let's go to last month. I think we got data, but not only your revenue contracts, but against your sales orders and actually what that revenue was that came in. So if we pull up just a few prompts, this is actually going to take us into an ad hoc reporting report. So we can actually come in and we've got all these different dimensions or measures here on the left-hand side that we can actually pull in and report on. So right now I'm just looking at a report that's got our customers, materials, and GL accounts. But if I wanted to go in and actually see based off of what sales orders I have created, what are the different breakdowns in my revenue postings to my different GL accounts. So we can see here we've brought in all of our GL accounts that are relevant to revenue accounting. So we've got revenue, any changes with COGS, domestic product revenue, receivables adjustments for our performance obligations. I can actually come in and view the different contracts that are out there. So if I wanted to see all the different sales orders that I have, I can scroll across and I'll see everyone that I have created, all the way down to the different quantities in those contracts. So I can see here, for example, I've got a contract 202-113. If I wanted to filter down on this particular contract, I can filter down to the member. And then what I can also do is I can bring in my sales order items. So for example, we may have a couple of different items within a sales order, a couple different material, and I can see not only the receivable adjustments, but the sales revenue to each of those items, what the receivable adjustment would be, what my post to my COGS would be. And if I really wanted to, I could also drill down it from my contract back into my sales order. So this allows for the flexibility to not only start doing some additional reporting, but you can bring information in from sales, you can bring it in from revenue accounting, and just manipulate as an end user the look and the feel I want of the report without having to constantly go back and ask for different dimensions or measures within your report.
But Sarah, to just to clarify, so this is the analytics features out of the box, right? That you're showing.
Yes, so there's no enhancements that have been made. As long as you've got information in the S4 Universal Journal, you've got the ability to do core reporting. Yep.
And so this is kind of like, call it slice and dice, call it the pivot table on steroids, but this is a really nice feature of S4 / Universal Journal that now if you're running RAR on that platform, you get that advantage.
Correct. Yep.
Great.
Okay,
Thanks for showing us that.
Yeah, there's one more. So I want to show you kind of a disaggregation of revenue that comes out of the box as well. So what SAP has done is they've kind of enabled a couple of different reports out of the box. So disaggregation of revenue is just a quick enhancement of similar what we were using for the ad hoc reporting. But this one's just going to show by posting period, what is my disaggregation of revenue. If again, I wanted to bring in revenue contract per period, I could do so as well. And I can slice and dice my contract by revenue into these different areas. So I can continually get deeper and deeper into the information. This just kind of shows us not only from a sales order standpoint on the last report, but SAP just kind of delivering a high level what the possibilities are, and then you can also do the ad hoc reporting. So to kind of take a pivot from here, these are the reports that SAP delivers out of the box. What we've done at Bramisol is we've actually created reports that mimic the needs for the disclosures. So for example, if we go into another demo system, we'll be able to see all the different disclosure reports that Bramisol delivers out of the box. So we've got deferred revenue reports. You can see aggregated revenue by performance obligation, summary reports. You can do comparisons of GAAP to IFRS, be able to see short and long term, as well as opening and closing balances. So it's kind of a wide range.
Yeah, one clarification. This is like an add-on or a plug-in, right? You just
correct. Yes. So this would be an additional add-on into either ECC or S4. So as long as you've got revenue accounting, you've got the information. It's just a matter of pulling the right information to be able to utilize the revenue tool to be able to do your
just want to clarify that for the listeners that, you know, this is an add-on available from Bramisol. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, because I always get questions about reports, right? And so that's why we wanted to show you the slice and dice on the S4, as well as just make you aware of, you know, the other add-ons that are available.
Yep, so we can come in, it's a simple selection criteria, being able to see company code against customers, sales documents, revenue accounting contracts. We'll be able to look at different accounting principles. For example, this time we're going to focus on GAAP, and then we'll be able to see this just kind of builds out all the information that is needed for a deferred revenue report. So this is where you'll see you've got revenue accounting information next to sales order information. As you continue to scroll across, you'll see it starts to bring in additional information from sales orders, revenue accounting, as well as finance. So we're bringing all three different modules together, utilizing the Universal Journal to be able to have all information in one report. So we're looking at our sales order against our revenue accounting contract, and then what posted revenue is going to be out there. So if we have any assets or liabilities, what's the contractual amount and allocated? And then based off of your periods up until now, here's what has been posted. And then you can actually see going past this month for the next, let's say, 12 months, you're able to see what the deferred revenue is. So over the life of the contract, I can actually see for those time-based revenues, if they're out there, I can actually see when they'll when they'll be posted, and then at the end, anything that's been posted past the next 12 months. Okay. And the last one I just want to showcase, I know we're coming up close to time, and John will give you a couple minutes. The last one I want to showcase is aggregated revenue by performance obligation. This is important because as everybody kind of transitioned into ASC 606, there was a need to start tracking our performance obligations. So this is important because this actually gives us all the information needed to understand if our performance obligations have been fulfilled, or if there's still some information that needs to be, or still some revenue that needs to be posted. So we can see here, based off of our customer, as we continue to scroll across, we're looking at material group information, material information, all the way to performance obligations. So we can see our revenue contract and performance obligation. And then what is my revenue performance obligation over the life of the contract. So I can see what's been posted up until now, actually been posted in this month, and what's the total against my costs as well. So you'll see revenue posted, cost posted, and then everything that's still unrecognized per the performance obligation. So you can see when performance obligations are complete, when performance obligations are still unfulfilled or unrecognized, and actually be able to quickly just take the data that is created on these reports and put them into your disclosures without really having to do too much manipulation to be able to disclose.
Right. Yeah, in the interest of time, Sarah, what is just to note for everybody that what we have done also is done that process where you aggregate all of this together, and we've created tools that you can quickly aggregate the data that's provided here into the appropriate disclosure reports and disclosure indicators as required by ASC 606 or IFRS 15. And because you're in S/4HANA and because you're in SAP, it gives you that complete drill down capability. But today we wanted to spend time kind of showing you S/4HANA in 1909. So.
Yeah, and so there was a, so anyway, let's wrap up, and then there's a couple questions. So anyway, Sarah and John, anything else?
No, I think I'm good, Pete. You know, everybody knows. You know, we've been on here enough. Everybody knows who Bramisol is. So we'll turn it back to you.
All right, so we're just about wrapping up. I want to thank the speakers. Then we have a couple minutes. We'll just do a little bit of Q&A, and I don't have to show the slide.
I have one that says Q&A if you want.
Yeah, why don't you show the Q&A? Yes, I want to thank John and the Bramisol team for hosting. Of course, John and Sarah for that demo. I think it really just allows people to see the latest, and we're already getting some good questions in the chat, which we'll talk about a couple here in a second. I want to thank Volkmar and Gerald for staying up so late, right? They were in Germany providing the updates on the ERP and S4 system. Martin and Petra couldn't, usually they're able to join, but Martin's on vacation and Petra's tied up, so appreciate Volkmar and Gerald doing double duty this time. And of course, Serbi and Deepti on the RAR at SAP, right? That was, you know, really a great story. They're the first customer, and now to see them using the latest is great, and they, you know, have a wealth of knowledge that they've learned during that journey. Of course, Roshni and Akus on the deep dive topic, the fiscal year change, and then of course the demo you saw from John and Sarah. So along those lines, there's some questions coming through about the volume. I mean, HANA, I mean, typically some of the HANA RAR customers we have are manipulating what I'll call tens of millions of contracts a month, right? So the volume is really a step change. So I would not be concerned about the volumes. The optimized contract management allows you to handle even more probably, you know, difficult or intense challenges, especially with a single RAR contract that might have, you know, lots of POBs. So what's lots? Let's say more than 10,000, right? So anyway, there's lots of things in S4 that really manipulate or are able to handle some of the complexities and especially some of the volumes much better. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else we want to make a comment on. Okay, I think the rest will probably roll out later. John, did you want to go to the poll questions? Because I know that we had some polls.
I do. We do have some
Why don't we get
polls.
those
Thank you,
out
Pete.
before, right, people drop
Before
off?
everybody drops, sure. So we have 2 polls for you. The first poll we're going to ask you, we often, we try to run these as often as we can, and Pete and I are always looking for opportunities to see what you'd like to hear about. So we have a quick poll asking you to tell us what is it that you'd like to see in the future.
Right, these 2 polls, yeah, exactly. So we're trying to get an idea of feedback from the users as to what would be helpful as topics in the next meeting.
Okay, so the 4, just to remind everybody, are integration with results analysis, whether it's through project systems or other. Optimized contract management, integration to COPA and detailed POB costing, where you can look at what your costs are relative to your revenue recognition at a POB level, and then subscriptions and BRIM integration. And we know there's a lot of you out there, so come on, go ahead and vote.
Yeah, I know challenging is that some people will be trying to log off as well, so.
We still got 77 people out there.
Still coming through.
We'll give you another few seconds.
While doing that, I'll try to go through the.
All right, so why don't we close that out? We'll take another couple of seconds in 4, 3, 2. Get your vote in last minute. All right, let's close
It's
the poll
almost
out.
split evenly, but okay, great. And there was one more poll, right?
And we do have one more poll, a quick one. We're going to ask everybody, with everything that's going on today, what is your status with regard to migration to S/4HANA? So if you could share with us the plans that you have with regard to that, that would be very helpful, because it'll help us in positioning where are you going, and talk more about some subjects that might be interesting to you.
Yeah, and I know the SAP IT team, they moved from, the ECC to the RAR version, and that project, from what I understood, went fairly well. And so we do have a lot of questions constantly coming up from customers saying, what's involved in moving to S4 and things like that. So that's also why we wanted to ask this question.
Right. Got about 30% of the audience who voted.
Yep.
Sounds like a Russian voting election. 33%. All right. All right. Cool. We give it another couple of seconds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so far it looks like about half are in the planning stage, considering planning, about 20% in process, 10% not on their plans, and then 30% are already finished. So.
All right, let's close it out. And as you said, it looks like about half are considering and planning. A few of you have finished, and about 15, 17% are in process. Thank you very much for that information. All right.
All right, well, that's all we have. John, did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
The only thing we have is, for those of you who are interested in more about the disclosures, we will be doing more detailed dive on the disclosures on June 18th. So if you're interested in more details about disclosures in SAP RAR, check out our website and the webinars. And then Pete, you and I are going to be doing something about BRIM towards the end of the month. So we'll make sure everybody is aware of that. Yep. And we'll let you know when the next
yeah, I mean, so we'll plan for, we think we'll have one probably in Q3. Not sure if we'll do one over the summer. It really depends on some schedules. But anyway, I would say, let's say late summer or early Q3, we would plan, late summer or as we get into early Q4, but probably late Q3 is when we'll have the next one.
Yep, perfect.
All right, everyone. Again, I want to thank John and the Brambosol team for sponsoring all the speakers. Also hoping everyone's staying healthy and safe. And with that, I think we can wrap this one up. Give us a few days to get the video recording out. We might need to make some adjustments like on the agenda and things like that we missed and want to make it the right updated versions in. But anyway, hopefully by next week it will be out there and posted.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a terrific
All right,
day and
thanks.
stay safe.